as we go into this. I saw a really nice article on this by Porter Boyles with the Texas ACL group. So I'm just going to bring this over and we'll talk about differences between sorting and pre-sorting, and then a little bit later on we're going to talk about indexing tables as well. So that will come up. And in the sorting and pre-sorting, this article, what I noticed was a lot of times if I had very large files that my pre-sorting wasn't working, and the actual basically it would bomb out. And what I've kind of noticed was that then every command after that would bomb out as well, and I wasn't able really to get anything done. And especially if I was doing a pre-sort and a secondary sort, and just to kind of show you where does that come in, pre-sort, secondary sort. If I'm joining tables together between one file and another, that's normally where you're going to be able, where you'll have that situation. And just any of these files. So you'll have your pre-sort secondary table, pre-sort primary. The secondary table is where you'll end up in that situation. And let me just head back to my slide here. So in Porter's article here, and we have the link to it in our slides, it does walk through that and noting, rather than pre-sorting and secondary sorting, you might want to just sort the tables prior to that. So, one of the first things that you could do, and this is just noted here, is you could sort the first file to a table called sorted, and then sort another table to another sort another table called sorted one, and then you could join those two tables together, and by joining them together you would create this final sorted table. Then once those two sorted tables are joined together, because they've been sorted already, when you're in ACL and you're at your joining table command here, because they're already sorted, you can deselect the pre-sort and the secondary table sort. Now, just be careful doing that. I mean, make sure that you've sorted the tables and everything's okay there, but assuming that you've done that, that should work fine. Another thing to note, and I think it's still a good note, we just talked about it, and I think he notes it a little bit down below, maybe not. Yeah, I don't think he does note this one, so I'm going to bring it up as kind of point number 2 in our analysis here, is really just what I just talked about. If you have two really large files, nothing hurts by extracting just the fields that you need. So if you just extracted out 2 or 3 fields from the tables that you're going to sort and and secondary sort, that will also allow you to create a smaller file. ACL will have a smaller problem with sorting it because it's a much smaller file, and hence you'll be able to get the pre-sort and secondary sort off. So you don't have to follow this approach of sorting all the time. You can use pre-sort and secondary sort, but if it's a large file, you might want to extract only the fields you need. The summarizing also kind of plays into it, where again you could read all of his comments, but one of the thoughts here is just to create a summarized table, like his example here where he has this summarized table. He could then summarize it down so that there's only, let's say, 4 or 5 Porters in here, and he's summarized this without even sorting it. So if you notice here, he's got Porter, John, Sue, John, Porter, John. He has Porter 4, John 2, Sue 1, John 1. So, another option is, instead of even sorting it first, you could just summarize it. But again, if you do the summarize, and that's an analyze command, you would not select the pre-sort. So you would actually deselect pre-sort and just take the file raw, just like Porter has in this example, and summarize it. And I think this is a good remembrance, as you look at this, something to remember is that the data that are in these tables isn't, it a lot of times isn't sorted, and if you do summarize it without sorting it, you're going to get something looking like that, where Porter shows up twice and John shows up 3 times. But again, now you've broken it down where you used to have 20 or so records. Now you have only about 5 or 6 records, so it reduced the file size enormously. Okay, the other thing is just to summarize where order of information is desired, right? So, I mean, another thing is we're, again, talking through other summarized commands here, and he has a couple more examples down below that allow you to kind of utilize the sort function or the summarize function instead of pre-sort if that becomes an issue for you. Okay, so I wanted to note some of the issues of pre-sorting and sorting before I got into my next topic, which let me just bring up our slides here, and that is indexing and relating tables. So indexing tables is where you don't create an actual file for that file. So when you sort a file, you create another file on your hard drive. When you index a file, you do create a file on your hard drive, but it's an index file that's a lot smaller. And really the index file, if you can imagine it for a second here, the index file will normally just be a bit of a record number, and then the sorted order record number. So, I wish I could give you a quick example of this, but just I wish I could show you this, but let's say you had check number here, and this was the this is the actual record number of the file. This would be then the sorted record number of that file. So this would be kind of the sorted version of that, if you will. But again, this would be the actual record number, and this would be the sorted one. So I don't have an example of that for you today, but you can get an idea. That index file, because it's just 2 columns, is a lot smaller than creating an entire sorted file that has every one of these columns in it. So again, if you have a sorted file and if you have a file and you sort it, you will create a new file that is of an equivalent size. So 1 gigabyte file sorted equals 2 gigabytes on your hard drive. An index file, 1 gigabyte file sorted, it might only create an index of maybe 10 megabytes, 100. Now, I don't even think it would be 100 megabytes. It depends, but it shouldn't be that large. Similarly, to joining tables, we have sorting versus indexing, and we have joining versus relating tables. And in the relating tables, which I'm showing you here, you actually do an index first. So ACL behind the scenes, whenever you relate tables, and by the way, I related these 2 tables together, when you relate these 2 tables, it will automatically create an index file for each one of these related tables in the background. You won't know that it's done. And once that's done, then you're able to carry fields, and we're going to show this an example, but it's kind of joined in ACL's brain. So instead of creating a join file, again, you join a gigabyte file with a 100 megabyte file, you're going to end up with a file that's probably 1.2 gigabyte, or depending on how much you join together. But if you're using relations, that gigabyte file stays the same size when it's related. It never changes. It's always a gigabyte. It's just it now has a few indexes that have been created that are more like, a couple of megabytes here, a couple of megabytes there. So that is the indexing relation function. I always like to show you a few pictures before I jump into ACL and start talking more data. But let's take the paid file as kind of a starting point. And notice here I have this index box over to the right, and I have some indexes that are available to me. So I'm going to create a few more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go data, create index, and I will do a index on the invoice date. And I'll call this to a file called invoice date index. So now I have the invoice date index available. I've already created other indexes based on the enterer, so I can hit the enter button. Now it's sorted by enter, and let me just to make this a little easier on everyone's eyes, we'll make that 12 big, and I will add I'll add over to the left-hand side here the invoice date, the enter initials, and the invoice batch. Let's just kind of go with those 3. So right now I'm sorted on the enter initial. We have FS first, JC, JL, KW, NP. Okay. Then I go to the invoice batch sort or index. and now it's 349, 351, 352, etc. And then I could do the invoice date index, and again, 1995, 96, 97. And what's nice about, I mean, other ways to sort your data, mind you, is just to right-click the field and say, oh, I'd like to sort on check number. And I can right-click and just go quick sort ascending or quick sort descending, and boom, it happens. I like indexes, though, in that if you're constantly looking at your data in ACL, that it does make it a little bit easier to kind of create these indexes. And whenever you open up the table, ACL, like notice here, if I go back to this other table and then come back to the paid file, click on my indexes, they're all right there. So they stay linked to my data file for use in further usage down the road. And I find that useful, especially, I mean, I know that I'm only looking at 729 records and things will go very quickly, but these indexes really do run very fast, and it's almost as fast as what I just showed you, because in a lot of ways what ACL is only doing is indexing it and showing you only the amount of data in your view screen at any given time. So it is a lot faster to run. Okay, so other notes here as we think about indexing versus sorting. Indexing is fine. The only thing that you need to remember is that when you finally want to summarize or join or what have you, those will go a lot slower if you're indexing or pre-sorting the table. If you have two sorted tables, so again, we join together two fully sorted tables together, it kind of takes away two steps there, doesn't it? We don't have to pre-sort, we don't have to pre-sort this. That can take minutes each time to run the pre-sort and minutes again to run the secondary sort before you're running your join command. So again, just by doing these sorts up front, it does allow you to kind of speed up processing down the road. I will tell you, as just, again, I'm a little bit of an old dog, not learning new tricks at times, in that I will sort and build into my scripting down below here a lot of the sorting that I do, knowing that I'm probably going to work with a lot of large files, and I'd rather just kind of get it out of the way. And I may have mentioned this on other programs, but one of the things that I do when I complete a sort is I'll say sort on field to sorted. I create files like the word sorted, and then I keep overwriting that file. So, the next time I open up the invoice file, then I open up the vendor file, and once again I sort on field to sorted, overwriting what I previously did. And that's, when you're doing that, you're not really impacting your hard drive very much. And, and that's, even though you are creating a gigabyte file when you sort it, it's something where you just keep kind of overwriting that, and then as we said at the end of the script, which again, as you can imagine, I script a lot more than I command on the fly. At the end of the day, you can actually just delete through these commands here all of the sorted files that you've created, so that it really doesn't impact your processing very much. Okay, so that is sorting and indexing and pre-sorting. The last thing I wanted to show you is the relate tables. So I had built a few relationships already, and I'm tempted to break them and start over, but I won't. I'll show you another way of doing that. So I have here a purchase file, a vendor file, and they've been related. The purchase file has been related to the paid file, bear with me, based on the PO number. And somewhere in here, so in the PO number, there it is, so you can see it, and then the vendor number is related to the vendor file on vendor number. So you have those relationships set up as well in the data. And okay, if I do want to break the relationship, I'm wondering if it's going to bark at me. Okay, so it barks at me as I expected, because I have my current view open over here. So we have to kind of finish. Let me break these. Bear with me. Go to Data, Relate Tables, and I can actually break these relationships. And I believe I can't really delete these tables, so I thought I could. I'm used to Access. If you've ever used Microsoft Access, it utilizes the same kind of functionality that we're seeing here. So when I click on my finish button, now it's going to bark at me and say, you had all these fields in here and now they're gone. What happened to those relationships? So let me go back now and reinstate them. So what we'll do is we'll add table, and we're going to add the purchase file, which is the purchase order file, to my accounts payable payment file. And we're going to join that on PO number. So I'll just drag that over to PO number. Then I'm going to add another table. And you can keep doing this, mind you, for 18 tables. So you can have 18 joined tables or related tables over here. I don't know why you would need so many. I mean, I'm sure there is a need for this, but I generally don't need more than maybe 5 or 10 at the absolute most. But ACL is built for 18, and again we've joined on vendor number and PO number here. Now that I've done that, I can finish this, and any command that I have, if I want to add, if I want to add columns here, as long as I go from table, okay, and we select purchase table, I'm then able to kind of bring over, say, the PO number or the PO issuer as an example, and those are brought over, as you'll notice, whenever there's a PO number. Now, again, a bit of an old dog with new tricks, or with old tricks. I tend to like to clean up fields whenever I do these relationships. I think a lot of times people will realize that they have a PO number field, and when they look in their format, they have a PO number and its numeric value, and the length of it is 20 and that kind of thing, and they're trying to relate that to another table where the PO numbers, say in the purchase file, we'll just go down to that, let's just say is 7 in length, and we'll just kind of go to this PO number here, where instead of it being 5 in length, it's 25 in length, and it's ASCII, and it's all these different fields. As much as ACL's gotten a lot better at I guess addressing that and being able to join on numeric fields, and being able to work with fields that may not be the same length, I'm still a big believer in doing my own homework and checking that those things are right, because I'm still, personally, I do forget, which commands are, that particular and which ones are not that specific. And I'd rather kind of take the approach of making sure my fields are the same length. And we're going to talk about that in a second when we talk about merging tables together and making them, kind of making the fields the same length and the same format. I want to talk through that with you. But just, it's something for right now. I wanted you just to bear that in mind, that I've already done my homework here and kind of noted, oh, the PO number is 5 in length and it's an ASCII field in both tables. The vendor number is, I believe, 6 in length, and and it's in both tables, and it's in 6 in length in both, and it's an ASCII field in both, so it works. Now, I wanted to note one other really interesting thing, in my opinion, is now that I have the paid file open. So notice we have the paid file open. We had related on the purchase file and the vendor file. Notice I can't now make joins to that table. So, it is something to remember, that when you are relating tables, you can't go back and then start joining on those tables as well down the road. You kind of have to pick one way or another. And so, as a last but not least kind of comment, I will admit I don't use relate tables that much. I tend to utilize the join table a lot more. Because of that fact that sometimes down in the road of my scripting, I'm going to sit there and say, wait a second, I need to join now to that table to go get something else. Now, the fact that it's already related, you technically have the join already established, but it may not be joining on the same field. So, we used to join it on, in this case, we joined a field on, say, PO number. Maybe we want to join the next one on PO issuer for some reason. And, again, you just can't do that. So you kind of have to decide which way you're going and then follow through with that. And I think with relating tables, what I tend to use, what I wanted to finally note with them, is that I tend to use relating tables when I have explanatory tables here. So you might have, and these aren't bad examples of that, a vendor file and a purchase file, but you might have like a general ledger table and it has like a company code file and a account description file and a whatever file. So these are other ones that you're bringing in more explanatory information. And these other tables that I talk about, they're really only good for that. They're not, you're not going to use them in your further processing other to say, well, JL, who is that enterer? Well, let me relate to that JL enterer field to a table called, Jessica Lanza, who is that related to that JL enterer initial. So again, that is the sorted indexing.